Hey guys, it's Mitch. How's it going? We're taking a look today at NAMOR number 26, the Savage NAMOR in his Savage Undies. This is going to be written by John Byrne and penciled by Jae Lee, his first regular work in comics. So just before we get into it, if you enjoy the channel, if you feel like you might want to help out a little bit, go subscribe on my Patreon. Links are in the description, gives you early access to everything I do, helps out the channel, and helps to buy new comics. So this is an issue that was a big, weird turnaround for a long-standing character in the Marvel Universe. I mean, basically the longest standing character in the Marvel Universe. We'll do a quick rundown on the creators first. John Byrne, of course, became a household name with his work on Uncanny X-Men in the late 70s, and from there went to Fantastic Four, where he did his seminal run, which lasted a whole fucking 5 years. It's ridiculous. And he kind of bounced around a little bit after that. He did the Avengers, he did the Incredible Hulk, he did Alpha Flight, for some reason. So in the 80s, John Byrne, full-on superstar artist who could like single-handedly revive a comic book. And I mean single-handedly because he would often do both the writing and the penciling. Sometimes the inking too. On NAMOR, sometimes he would also do the lettering, because why the fuck not? After that, he goes to DC and puts out a brand new Superman title. This is the comic just called Superman. Reworks his origin a bit and his history, and makes him a bit more, well, I mean, basically a bit more how John Byrne sees the character. John Byrne has some kind of old-fashioned ideas about comic book characters, but that's not always a bad idea, particularly not with somebody like Superman. After that, he comes back to Marvel, and I would say he's probably still a star, but his books aren't superstar books. He gets put on Avengers West Coast, and he does Sensational She-Hulk, which was a good book, but I don't think had a huge following. And then in 1990, he gets Namor the Submariner. And John Byrne's take on Namor is going to be that he's a CEO of a Fortune 500 company dedicated to battling pollution and eco-terrorism, shit like that. Which is, I mean, an interesting take on the character, but again, it doesn't really feel like he was set up for success in 1990, which was when this title started. And John Byrne he got pretty far into the title, like 2 years, up till issue 25. Before he basically got burned out on the character, which I understand. Issue 25 itself was penciled, inked, lettered, and written by John Byrne. So he was just, he felt constrained by the character, apparently. Maybe just the character that had been established was a bit too rigid, and he felt like he needed to bust out of that. So what Marvel decided to do was they assigned him a new penciler to help him shake things up. And the guy they picked in this case was Jae Lee. Jae Lee didn't have a ton of experience drawing comics at this point. Really, the only thing he had under his belt in 1990 was a continuing story in Marvel Comics Presents featuring the Beast, which I have an issue of. It's this one here. I had this one when I was a kid, too. This is a crazy issue to have, really, because you get, like, early Jae Lee, as well as the Sam Keith, Peter David story about Wolverine. That's fucking bonkers with Cyber and everything. And you also get one of Joe Mad's extremely early stories, maybe even his first. And you can see that here Jae Lee has some potential. He's got decent fundamentals, but he's definitely a style over substance guy at this time. And the editors thought in this case that it might be a good idea to assign him to an experienced writer like John Byrne, who's been around at this point for like 13, 14 years and shepherded titles to incredible success. So now, Jae Lee is going to get a crack at reviving the Namor character for John Byrne. So we'll see how that goes. Might as well start with the cover here. That cover is ridiculous. The shadows make, I would say, negative sense. How are you shadowed under here and under here, but also up here? That doesn't make any sense. And Jae Lee at this time probably said, fuck it, I don't care. It looks cool. And I mean, it kind of does, sure. Crazy musculature, super intense. A bit too skimpy of a thong for my liking, but hey, to each their own, you know. And after John Byrne's version, who's the clean-cut executive, like, this is a huge departure. So the deal with Namor at this time, in the issue before, he gets confronted by a Doctor Strange-style wizard. You get the impression more of an evil wizard. He doesn't present himself as a nemesis for Namor, but he is a nemesis of Iron Fist, who recently helped Namor out just before this, and apparently he's punishing Namor now by erasing his memories. So we're going to get a complete reboot of the character, essentially. So we're starting out, this is 6 months after the last issue. This is at the headquarters of Oracle, the company that Namor runs, and this is Namorita, who is Namor's sister and acting CEO of his company. And of course she's asking, it's been 6 months, where is Namor? Nice, stylish looking opening. Not super dynamic for a splash, but Jae Lee's always had a pretty great sense of design. Even when he's not going for hyper intensity, which is most of the time, he can still come up with a pretty compelling image, which I think we've got here. So this is going to be written, of course, by John Byrne, penciled by Jae Lee, inked by Bob Wiacek, so they're not giving Jae Lee free reign to ink his own work just yet. They will eventually, and those are going to be some crazy fucking issues. We'll take a look at those later. Colored by Glynis Oliver and Pat Garrahy, lettered by John Byrne and Steve Dutro. Yeah, it says here, a mighty Marvel welcome to Jae Lee on pencils. So the new guy, you haven't heard of him before. His shit's crazy. But yeah, just like I like the figure work on Namorita here, and showing that he's not afraid of doing some skyline type backgrounds. He may have a bit of a idea for a template that he's using, which is simple, but it works. And I mean, one of the main things with Jae Lee that you hear around this time is speed. The rumor is that Jae Lee was pumping out 8 pages a day at his peak, which is an insane number. And then you look at some of those pages and it's like, okay, I can see how they would be pumped out faster than normal anyway, because I mean, a lot of it is simplistic shapes. He does a lot of like the silhouette type of stuff. He does minimal backgrounds a lot of the time. It's more about the design and, like I said, just the intensity of everything. And if he's able to envision what he wants to put down before he gets there, like, if he's got a good idea beforehand based off of what he's drawn previously, then I can see him just kind of going. It is still pretty impressive, though. So Namorita is meeting with, I can't exactly tell who everybody is. Obviously, there's Captain America here. This is, one of these is Iron Fist. I think that one there. And that looks at least like Black Widow. And this guy here is Namor's head of security. And they basically just got together to say, we still have no idea where he is. We're pretty sure he's not dead. For one thing, Namorita probably would have felt it. They're linked in some way. And also, Iron Fist here has experience with the guy who wiped Namor's mind. This is Master Khan. And he says Master Khan just doesn't work like that. That's way too simple of an ending for him. So they kind of adjourn the meeting from there because Namorita gets kind of overcome with emotion. And Cap stays behind with her, as well as the security chief is also going to stay back, and they're going to try and spitball a little further. So a bit of a pointless meeting, but we do have to establish the scenario. So that's really kind of the whole purpose of it. And like most of the stuff is okay. It's not amazing. It's certainly competent, at least. Except for this panel here, which is fucking great. With the Dutch angle and the weird design shit going on, all the silhouettes. I mean, it all works really nicely. It is kind of a standard Jae Lee thing, but it feels a little bit like he was maybe going out of his way a bit to try and wow people. Within the confines of the story he's got, which at least at the start isn't particularly dynamic. So Cap and Namorita are just going to have a bit of a chat now to kind of ease us out of this scene. Cap tries to float the idea of, maybe we're just not going to find Namor anytime soon. Namorita, of course, doesn't believe that. She feels that something is going to happen that will lead her to him, which seems pretty likely. Otherwise, this would be kind of a boring narrative. Pretty cool overall splash here of Cap and Namorita, with Cap largely silhouetted, which, makes him look a little bit sinister, but that's just kind of how everybody looks when Jae Lee draws them, so it's okay in this case. Like, getting Jae Lee to draw Captain America is a little bit like getting Mark Teixeira to draw Union. You're just not going to get what you're hoping to achieve in that comic, I think. So from there, we cut to the West Coast. They don't say specifically where, but this is a logging camp somewhere, so probably not California, maybe Washington, potentially even British Columbia. John Byrne is Canadian. He'd know at least that there's forests in British Columbia. So yeah, this is a logging camp. This is your average, everyday logging machine, which is like, sure it is, Jae Lee. If John Byrne had drawn this, he would have done a little bit of research about what a logging machine looks like. Jae Lee just watched War of the Worlds and went, got it. Nice double-page splash kind of here. Like, just, you get that sense of depth from the background with pretty minimal detail, really. You know, there's not a lot of rendering in the mountains here. The forest here is all blacked out. Even the rocks, I mean, this is like right next door to screen doors, really. But it still gets that sense of depth across. It's impressive stuff. Like, as a minimalist, Jae Lee, I'm sure at least partially it's out of necessity, but he's also very skilled at it. Very young, too. I think he's about 20 around this time. And yeah, so one of the loggers here is going to work and just gets killed by something in the tree. It's not very clear what. And honestly, looking at it, there's no way to make it clear, at least not with the images, because everything is silhouetted here. It's still silhouetted in a skillful way, though, because there's framing going on, and there's nothing crossing over the figures to confuse them. Again, for a very young guy who doesn't have almost any experience at all, really, drawing professional comics, Jae Lee has a shit ton of skill very early. So yeah, that one logger gets killed, and his co-workers come to see what the fuck just happened. They see some dude, some savage dude, silhouetted against the forest, and they all decide to run after him because apparently something has been picking them off for the last few weeks. They've lost 6 already, and now, you know, they've lost another one, and this guy is here. He must be the reason. And everything in silhouette, by the way. I mean, again, he does a decent job of separating everything. These are pretty classic Jae Lee figures, where they're barely sketched out. I assume this is a speed thing at this point, trying to catch up, or maybe even get a little bit of lead time. Maybe even just crank out the pages to make more money. It still looks interesting, though. And then we get our first full shot of Namor, the Savage Namor, with his big bushy hair and beard. And it's, you know, it's okay. It's not quite living up to that cover, I would say. But it's pretty good. I think part of the problem here is the Bob Wiacek inks. If Jae Lee had been able to ink himself, this would have looked way more crazy. But we didn't get that, and Bob Wiacek is trying to make sense of this as best he can. I mean, good fucking luck with Jae Lee sometimes, I think. So all the loggers pile on. We get, like, you know, a cool splash page setup at least. Like, the actual design for these 2 pages is pretty neat, with, like, the little diagonal panels here and then the counter ones going the other way. Basically, Namor mops the floor with all of them until one of them gets lucky and smashes him in the head with a chainsaw, which eventually knocks him out. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. Later on, he gets brought to the police headquarters, and the doctor takes a look at him, says this guy should be dead, but for some reason, he seems to be fine. You know, he's got some, like, cuts and bruises and stuff, but for getting smashed over the head with a chainsaw, he did okay. Again, you know, just nice-looking panels, nice minimalist establishing shot, where you get the building and the foreground all in silhouette, and just, again, minimalist-looking mountains in the background here. Nice work on the sky, too. That looks like a Glynis Oliver thing, with the separations in the color. So, they leave him to recover. They kind of start spitballing on who he might be. And it's always interesting when they do this. They start going, is he like a circus freak or something? He's got those ears, the pointy Namor ears. And he's like, no, I don't think so. I think it's more likely he's an escaped mental patient. Like, this is 1990. We've had 50 years of superheroes. And still, people don't think superhero right off the bat when somebody mops the floor with a dozen people. I mean, I get this is a small town off on the West Coast that probably hasn't seen maybe even any action in terms of superheroes, but still, like, they're a prevalent force in the Marvel Universe at this time. I think this is right around the time John Byrne was probably thinking about doing Next Men, which is his own comic book, starts a completely new universe, starts it from scratch, and doesn't have to be fit into, like an intricate web of existing properties. That might be part of it. It's just that there's too much, like, lore and existing events in the Marvel Universe that theoretically Namor should be keeping up with, but John Byrne has his own stories he wants to tell. So anyway, the doctor checks around with the local asylums. I think they're even called asylums here. Yep. They don't have anybody missing matching that description, so they're just going to have to hold him until he wakes up and see what the deal is. And meanwhile, the chief's daughter brings Namor some food in his cell, and she's like swooning over this shirtless stranger. Again, small town, and some excitement kicks up with a mysterious figure. And yeah, I can kind of see like some pretty 20-year-old girl getting like all romantic about it, like romanticizing it. She does go over with him the fact that he doesn't remember anything, other than remembers how to speak English, and he's able to figure out that it's probably not his native language because it doesn't come to him that easily. He has no idea where he's actually from, though. And again, nice big panels here. I had to assume this is mostly Marvel method because this is nothing like how John Byrne would lay out pages. I don't think he's giving any real kind of instruction on panel design or page design, anything like that. Which again is the kind of thing that strikes me as crazy because you've got this like 20-year-old kid who doesn't have any experience kind of dictating how your comic goes. When you've already got a superstar writer/artist who can kind of, show him where to go. I assume there's like page descriptions of some kind. This is what has to happen on this page, etc. Otherwise, you're just kind of letting Jae Lee do his thing, and what happens when you do that is you get Hellshock, which, looks cool. Lasted for all of 4 issues. I know there's a second series and everything, but even that was only 3 issues, and that was a few years later. And as far as I recall, Hellshock didn't go fucking anywhere. Hellshock was just, I really dig the Crow, from what I can remember. Anyway, back in New York, back at Oracle headquarters, Namorita is in the process of dismantling the Mars Corporation, which was sort of an adversary company for Namor that ran through the first 20 issues or so of the book, run by Desmond and Phoebe Mars. That's Phoebe there. She was the one who was in it earlier, not Black Widow, so that was my mistake. I forgot about that whole aspect of things. I do vaguely recall there was a bit where she was all over Namor. I don't know. The Mars stuff, if I recall, was like corporate espionage type shit. I don't entirely remember anymore. The Namor book, man, it's well intentioned, but like I don't know how you get interested in that book. So yeah, Phoebe Mars is of course objecting to her old company being completely dismantled. She's now technically an employee of Oracle, and she's not happy about this whole situation. The woman here, the secretary woman, used to work for her at Mars Corp, and doesn't have a whole lot of pity for her because, she and her brother did way worse when they were running that company. Like, they're villain executives. They're like the slimiest kind of people. Again, cool designs on the page here. Again, with a Dutch angle, even though Phoebe here is basically straight vertical, and then Namorita is off to, she's going off to the side here. Gives it almost like a fisheye quality. But it doesn't look strained in any way. It's interesting how he can do that. Okay, so then Phoebe goes into the elevator and is confronted by her ghost brother. I don't know how her brother died. I don't think I ever read that part. But he's not happy about the state of Mars Corp anyway. Back to Namor in the cell where they release him, because they don't really have a reason to hold him other than he got knocked out by a bunch of loggers. And when he leaves, the sheriff's daughter is waiting outside for him. Really nice shot, like really cinematic with them silhouetted against the setting sun, but leaving so much room on the side here. It's just an interesting choice. So they wander back to the logging camp. There's that War of the Worlds looking shit there. And they keep discussing the fact that Namor doesn't remember anything and he's not sure where to go or what to do from here. She suggests that maybe they should come up with a name for him, and decides it should be something regal, because he seems to have a regal bearing about him. And eventually decides on Rex, as in Imperious Rex, of course. And she takes him back to her and her father's house. Apparently this was agreed upon with the sheriff, where he's going to be staying with them, at least until he can get his feet under him, I guess. And just kind of shows him around. Again, nice choices for shots of the background, like stuff like this, where it's all silhouetted, but Dutch angled, and just trying to keep things a little bit interesting, even though this is essentially, it's not even really exposition, it's just kind of making idle conversation. But that kind of thing needs to happen between these two characters if they're going to be able to make better conversation in future, really. Namor looks out the window and muses, and she kind of, rests her hand on his shoulder and kind of runs her fingers through his hair, because she's read too many romance novels. Coming close to, showing his pointy Spock ears. And off in the distance, there's a crash, and one of the logging machines is attacking the jailhouse where her father is, the sheriff. And Namor decides he can't let this stand, so leaps out of the window, lands, and runs off towards the jailhouse to go and do something about it. Very interesting page design choice. Almost like a sunburst kind of thing. And like pairing broken down panels, because, you know, like these two are obviously the same image. These two are obviously the same image, only split both times to show some motion. And at a worm's eye view, but from different angles both times. He's got some very good instincts for a dude who has no real experience. So Namor arrives on the scene. The sheriff is down, but not dead or anything. I can't exactly tell who is driving the logging machine. Seems to be some kind of eco-terrorist, Greenpeace kind of thing, something like that. Again, interesting choices for panel shapes. And once more back in New York City, where somebody is waiting by her father's bedside. He's apparently not doing very well. Whatever his condition is, it's getting worse. Namorita comes in, and they just kind of shoot the shit about how much her dad liked Namor, and like he kind of like idolized him growing up. And then Namorita feels something off in the distance. She feels Namor's presence, and she goes flying out the window. Awesome shot. Super dynamic. And that's where the issue ends, actually. Kind of a truncated ending. But yeah, I imagine she's going to go and see if she can find him on the other side of the fucking country. And that's it for Namor number 26. So, not a huge issue in terms of events. This is more of a set the table kind of issue. We're going to be moving in a new direction from here. So we need to establish where all of our players are at this point in the story, what they're doing, what their goals are. Put in a little bit of conflict that doesn't 100% make sense, but that's okay. And we get to see a little bit of what Jae Lee is capable of for the first time. And it's some pretty good stuff. It's not, the kind of finish that it will be, I would think even less than a year from now, when he's, fully inking his own stuff and just kind of going to town and becoming a name. I'm pretty sure the first place I noticed Jae Lee was during his quick stint on X Factor in the middle of the Executioner's song, which at first I don't think I was too happy with because we were coming off of Larry Stroman. I like Larry Stroman quite a bit. And then, you get a couple of issues of Jae Lee just kind of going crazy. And not only that, but the other issues around that. This was right after the Great Exodus. So Uncanny X-Men is being drawn by Brandon Peterson, not Will Sportasio. X-Men is being drawn by Andy Kubert, not Jim Lee. And X-Force is being drawn by Greg Capullo instead of Rob Liefeld, which is a step up. But you think about what that kind of crossover could have meant like 2 years earlier. And it would have been fucking insane. But the standout of that series was X Factor. Because written by Peter David with Jae Lee, I think with a bit more experience under his belt and inking himself and just trying out some crazy shit. Those were some pretty good issues. And we'll hit the Executioner's song eventually. Anyway, that'll do it for this issue of Namor. We will, like I said, we'll do another one at some point in the future. One of the issues where he's both doing the pencils and the inks. Because I think that would be interesting to compare to. We might even do a couple because some of those issues can go by pretty quick, I think. I don't think we'll hit on any more of the Bob Wyacek inked issues unless there's like a clamor to see the resolution of the logging camp plot. I don't know that will happen, but I guess anything's possible. Anyway, though, that is going to do it for this issue. So thanks very much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notification so you know when the next one's coming out. Go over and subscribe on my Patreon. It gives you early access to everything I do, from the Blood Force stuff to the YouTube videos before they get uploaded to YouTube, as well as some Patreon exclusive content. You can also follow me on Instagram and DM me there for commissions, and you can join the Blood Force Discord server. But yeah, that's going to do it. Thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.